So let me show you very quickly how to use InDesign to make a portfolio site. So you can see here I've got InDesign open, probably opening the document I'm talking to you about now. So I'm going to create a new document. I'm going to go File, New Document. And normally for your site, you probably want like A4 or think about what size you want your images to be. So I'm going to go to Print. And I'm going to create just a quick A4 layout for mine. So if worst case scenario, I do need to print it out for some reason, I can. I probably have an A4 printer at home. I probably don't have an A3 printer at home. So I'm just going to say A4, but I can always over here change the size of my image, or I can change the paper size there. I can say how many pages I want to have. I'll say they want 10 images of my work, so I'll do 10 pages, but I'll do 10 pages of my work. And my margins, 12 millimeter margins is quite large. If I turn on preview, I can kind of see what my margins look like there. And I can see, okay, well that's quite a large margin. I don't think I want that big of a margin on my page, so I'm just going to turn my margins down just a little bit. And I'm going to press create. So, okay, this is InDesign. This is my site. So the very first thing I open up, first off, I'm in the Essentials. Over here on the left-hand side, I've got my pages, and here you can see I've got 10 pages that make up my portfolio. So the first thing I probably want to do is I'd probably like to put my work in. So let's say on page 1, this is going to be the cover page. I'm going to get back to that in just a second. But let's say on page 2 over here, this is where I'd like to start putting my work. So page 1 will be my cover, but page 2 is going to be my work. So what I want to do is I want to go and I want to find some work. So I've got a just a random website that I've pulled a bunch of student work off of from a Slack group. So let's just say I've got a bunch of images here. Let's just say I want to have a bunch of images, and let's just say these images almost work as like a contact sheet. So as I'm dragging out my images, if I'd like to fill this whole page with a bunch of images and I want to make a quick contact sheet, I'm just going to use the arrow key on my keyboard. I'm just going to use the up arrow key, and I've got now 2 columns, 3, 4. I can determine how many I want to have on a page just by clicking and dragging. So I selected a bunch of my images. As I'm clicking and dragging out my images, as I've dropped them into InDesign, when I release, what's going to happen is it's going to place those images into those boxes, and I'm not going to have like an instant contact sheet. It's that simple. Voila. Use Command Z for a second. You see here I still have 3 attached to it, so I still have 3 more images to go. So I could either keep clicking and dragging, so I could do a little layout here. I could know I've got 3 images, so maybe I want to do 1, 2, 3 like that, and then I could drag that on my page. And voila! If I let go now, those 3 will be filled with images of my work. And what it does is it tries to make them so they fit in the frames. So that's one way of just very quickly dropping a whole bunch of my work into InDesign. Now, when I want to start mastering my design, when I think about my layout, probably want to start adjusting where things are. So the first thing is that inside of InDesign, if you've dropped your work and you're happy with it, like for some reason you've sleekly laid everything out so everything's perfectly laid out, that's great. But if, for example, you want to change where things are inside of your frame, like I've got landscape images over here that are portrait, I might have to drop my images and move them out. But as you see, I click on my image there and I move it. I've got this little orange line around it, or rather brown, and I let go. Now my image is cropped because basically my image exists inside of this frame, and inside of this frame it's cropped. So I can change how it fits inside of that frame. I can right click on, say fitting, say fill frame proportionally, and then that will scale that up so it fits in there. And now if I click on that, that orange line represents the image inside of that frame. So I might want to change the position of that so it fills that whole frame. Same thing with this image. Maybe I don't want to have this image here. I could delete it. And maybe I could go back and I could take an image that is more of a landscape image and put it in there. So maybe I'll put that one in there instead because that makes more sense. And then maybe this one here, because it's more landscape anyways, I'll take my landscape image and drop that over there. So I can change what's in the frames just like that. So I can always just delete the content by selecting it and pressing delete on the keyboard to delete the content, and then I can add different content in there. So if I do have more sort of landscape work, I think for some reason I just happen to have like loads of portrait images, but I can just drop those in. If I've got an image from Photoshop, I might want to make sure that my image from Photoshop, I can just save it as a Photoshop image and it's just going to drop in. And you can see here, now that I've dropped those in, the frames are slightly different. So I can grab the side of the frame and I can make it so it's all sort of the same size. So I can drag this here. And the same thing, if I drag this with this one, it's going to want to snap to that. And you'll see that that will trim that because inside of my frame, my image will be trimmed. And you see here that InDesign, basically why we use InDesign is because it's so simple to work with and very quick. Now, there's another way I could create a layout with frames as well. So you see here I was kind of struggling to align everything so it's nice and aligned. There's another way I can make frames. I can just make a page with frames and then I can drop my work into it. So just like I did when I had my images, but this time I'm not going to drag and drop. I'm just going to drag out a box and I'm going to drag it to use my upper arrow key to make 2 images that way. And I'll just leave it like that. So there's 2 images on that page. I can kind of center them. Maybe I adjust it so I've got a little bit more space between the 2 of them. Now what I can do is I can drop my images into that. So I'll just grab 2 landscape images, like this, and let's say grab just another one. Let's do this one. And what you see is that the image is really big in this because the image itself is a large image. I haven't resized these images, it's just my images. InDesign will save this at a sort of a complete, correct size. So I'm going to just right click on this and I'll say fitting now. And I'll say fill frame proportionally, and that will just fit that so it fills into the frame. I can also click on that and just adjust it so I don't see the border of the page, for example. Now if I wanted to adjust this image, I can adjust this image in Photoshop. I can't do anything to the lighting or the contrast inside of InDesign. Same thing, I can right click on this image, fitting fill frame proportionally, and that will scale that so that image fits that frame. I can just adjust it accordingly as well. So that's a quick little layout for that. Now what I want to do is I'd like to add maybe a description or some text. I've got all these images. I'd like to add some descriptions to that because that's usually somebody wants to see. Also, too, if this was your portfolio, you'd probably have things like, imagine this being a bunch of sketchbook pages, some double page spreads. You'll see here that this isn't quite aligned yet, so I could grab from my ruler here and grab a column out. And I could get a nice little column there, and I could align it to that, and I could align it to that. Now, if you want to have a color background, if you'd like to have a nice solid color as your background rather than white, what I could do, I could click on my rectangle tool and I could drag out a rectangle that fills the entire square. And then under the properties over here on the right, I click on the fill and I can pick a color. Now what's really cool about InDesign is, like, I hate picking colors, I don't know about you, but there's this little tool here that looks like an eyedropper. If I click on that little eyedropper tool and I click on a color like this, it's going to create a little color palette based on an image. So I'm going to say I'd like my portfolio color palette to kind of come from this image. So I'm going to click on this. I think I clicked too long, I was on the wrong tool. If I click on this, it will create a little color palette based on that. So you can see, okay, excellent, I've got a little color palette. So let's say I want the background of this page to be yellow. If I hover over this page now, you see how my eyedropper is a little square on it? If I click on that, that page will now be yellow because I created that big rectangle. Put that big rectangle on top of all my images. I want to put that behind. So I'm going to click on that rectangle, I'm going to right click on it and say arrange, send to back. And that will send that to the back. And I'll just adjust this so that the image, that box fits all the way to the page end, so it's covering the entire page. So that black line there represents the page, and I just want my portfolio to cover that. Now if I want to see what this looks like when it's printed, I can hit the letter W, and that would show me what that sort of final version of it would look like without the lines. So the letter W lets me see it with the guidelines or without the guidelines. Then if I go in, the next thing I want to do is add some text. Also, if I would like to add a border to the work, let's say some of these white images would be better with a border, I can always click on the frame here, and then under the properties I could add a border. Yeah, I can add a border that's a color, so I can use my color palette here. Once again, it's remembered my color palette, so I'll use that sort of black color. It's kind of like a brownie black color, so I might just click on that. And if I click on that, it will add that border to the image. So maybe I want to have all of my images here with a nice consistent border. And just by clicking over the thing, you see how it's got like a little box that's like more of an outline? I'll add that border to that. I can also select a whole bunch of things at the same time. Go back to my eyedropper tool. If I hover over that color, it'll apply the border to all of them. Click the right spot forward and I could change the border over there on the right hand side as well. But it's only a little 9 by 9 frame, so it's not the biggest thing in the world. So now that I've got my things there, you can see that some of my images don't fit all the way, so I'm going to just right click, fitting, fill frame proportionally, and let's just scale that up. Or I might change the fitting of this one just so it's more of the text and less of my image. Remember to hold down the Shift key to freeze your transformations in place. Yeah. So I don't accidentally stretch my image. Same thing, I can adjust the size of that. Once again, hold down the Shift key, adjust the transformation. And this is much quicker if you kind of know what order you want to have your work in. So do yourself a favor and kind of have a quick order of your work. I'm going to hit W so I can see all my guidelines again. All right, that looks good. So let's see on this one I want to have some explanation. I'd like to talk about how these two images are related. I'd like to have a little text box in there. You see over here I've got a little type window. I can drag out a text box. Let's say I've got a text prepared. If you don't have a text prepared, I could do type, fill with placeholder text. And I'll just put some little Lorem Ipsum text in there. I can change the font and stuff over here under the properties panel. Change it to something I'd like it to be. So maybe, you know, have some fun picking a font. Spend some time picking a font that kind of represents you but isn't too over the top. Something nice and simple. Something that's nice and clear for a portfolio. You know, you don't have something that's too hard to read. It's too overthought. Do something simple like this is Calibri, maybe size 11. It's quite a large font. Maybe you know, maybe I've got a little bit more spacing between my lines. Maybe it just feels a little bit better. Maybe between my paragraphs I can want to have spacing. If you don't see this option, click that little arrow there. That'll expand that option out for you. So every time we don't see something, click the little option, this little buttons, the 3 little circles, and that will expand it. And then I could add some space between my paragraphs if I'd like. Maybe I've got a little bit too much space between lines. I'll bring that back and or it's a little bit too ambitious. 17 is too big of a gap. So now that looks a little bit better and I'm happier with that. I might make this a little bit smaller and I might consider like a little title. So what I'm going to do is I really like this text. So I'm going to keep using this layout as the layout for my thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to assign this as a paragraph style because I'm going to use this for the rest of my portfolio. And I'm going to say that this here is going to create a style. I'll call this main body text. Yeah. And I'm going to say create style. Yeah. So that's paragraph style 1. So now when I create a text box over here for my next thing where I'm going to put in another piece of text describing my work, I don't have to reformat the paragraph. I could just go to main body text, and if I do type fill with placeholder text, it'll have the same formatting I used earlier, and that just saves me work. Yeah, there's less stuff I need to do. I just want to put more portfolio together really quickly. Yeah. Amber, you do want to have little bits of writing up that explain your project. You'll want to have also too like titles. So I'm going to create a little text here that's going to be a title, and I'm going to say that type fill. I'm going to say project title. Oh, I'm sorry, the caps lock's turned on here. And once again, I'm going to just format the text. Something that's alright. I'm not going to show you me picking text for hours because I can't think of anything I'd rather myself watch. So I'm just going to grab something really quick. Let's do CPV. And I'll make it nice and big, and I will just sort of format this. Maybe I'll do maybe bold for a project title. I'm just going to adjust the size. Once again, if my text box is too small for my text, what's going to happen is my text is going to go away. If I've got a little red plus there, it just means it's too small. So if I just need to make it a little bit bigger, I can see what I'm working with. I can move that over, and I can adjust that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to save this as paragraph style, and I'm going to just say create paragraph style. I'm going to call this header 1. So now if I go over here, I can create another one. I can just create a new window here and drag that out, and I'll say basic paragraph, and I'll say that this is now header 1, and I'll do type fill with placeholder text. So I've got a little piece of text over here as well. So here we go. I've got some text. I've got this. I'm happy with that. The other thing too is turn on guides. Guides are your friends. So I'm just like aligning things kind of blindly. What I can do is I can create a guide for a page. But if I want to have guides on all of my pages, if I have a little grid that gives me alignment, what I want to do is I'm going to go to my pages over here. If I go to my master page, if I double click on that, this will apply this to all of my pages. Because you see on my pages here, all of the pages in the upper corner have the letter A. And that means that this is applied this A master stencil to that. And I create my guides in the master pages because it'll apply them to all of them. So if I go layout, create guides, I can then just throw some rows in there and some columns. It makes everything a little bit more lined up. The gutter is the space in between. I don't think I'd like to have that much of a gutter for this one because I'm not doing loads of text for a portfolio site. So I'm going to turn my gutter down. And I can have it aligned with the page, or I can have it aligned with my margins. I'm going to have it aligned with the page for mine. I'm going to press OK. So now if I go to all of these pages here, you can see I've got this lovely guidelines. And maybe if we like things when they fit to a guideline. Maybe I will adjust my images here so they fit inside of those guidelines. So that there's a bit of order to it. We like it when there's a bit of order to things like that. So it does help to create the guidelines earlier rather than later, because it's like you'll notice I'm having to resize something I've already resized. But it does give you the option to think about what your images are and how you're laying them out. And it just is a little bit more visually pleasing as well. So I'm going to move this one up. By the way, if you want to resize an image inside of Indesign, and you want to scale it, and you want to scale the frame and the content at the same time, hold down the Command key when you do that. Or Control here on PC. That will allow you to do that. So, alright, so I've got those on there. If I want to see what it looks like again, I'm just going to go to W. So that's probably too big of a gap there, so I might want to adjust the gap. And see, those pink lines mean it's nice and centered. I'll hit W again, that puts the guides back on. And I can see, obviously, I did not stick this to the guideline there. And I'm just tweaking it just a little bit, just so it looks all right and dandy. So now it's nice and centered. And those are centered on those guidelines as well. Alright, so I'm happy with that. Actually, I think those are the original guidelines and the guidelines I put in when I was doing the other thing. So I can play around and I can just adjust accordingly. Same thing now that I've got the guidelines down here, you'll see that this almost falls on those guidelines, so I can just align it so that this text fits within those guidelines. And maybe I've got an image or something there. And these are just tips to make your layout a little bit clearer. So maybe if we've got like a very long text for a big image I might put there, I might do it this way. I might, simple, clean design is sort of the key for this. So I've just grabbed another image and I'll just drag it across. So now I've got that as my image. So for the designs, you'll want to just think about with your pages, maybe you want to have some stuff that's full page spreads or double page spreads. That's up for you for your portfolio to really think about it. You might want to put your statement on there if you'd like. Basically, look at what your university requirements are, and don't always put your best work right at the beginning. Try and tell a narrative with your portfolio when you're building it. So make sure that your portfolio represents a narrative of your work and kind of tells who you are as an artist and who you're aspiring to be, whether it's a filmmaker or an animator or games designer or an illustrator. Make it that and make your work interesting, and lay it out very simply, and don't overthink about what it is going to be. And like I said, read what they want. Maybe they want a cover page. So if they want a cover page, maybe you design something that is more of a cover page. Cats portfolio. And I'm just going to select the text there. And I'm going to go into the properties, and I'm just going to, once again, go back into my header 1. Yeah, and I'm just going to maybe change my alignment to be sort of center aligned for that. Probably do my full name. I'm might choose a color. So if I go back to my little color picker there, I'm going to create that little color guide. I'm going to pick red, or I don't know if I like it like that, maybe yellow. That's really hard to see. Also, I've got more options down here, so I've got like a dark, I've got like my little version of like a dark green that's slightly off black. Maybe I like that a little bit better. And like I said, that's just sort of a great basic guide. So I've got a bunch of pages all sort of set up there. I've laid them out. You might want to consider adding some simple shapes and lines. So maybe if you want to add a line, there's a little line tool there. You can drag out a line that might help separate that. Hold down the Shift key to keep it nice and straight. And then over here I can add a stroke. And that just separates that out. And if I hit W, that just turns off all of that. And I feel like I've got something that's nice and clean. That's a nice sort of thing to kind of keep in mind. Try and keep it clean and simple for your portfolios. You don't want to overthink this. And your portfolios, if you've got text, if you've got sketchbook pages, put those in there, lay those out. You've got the ability to put multiple pieces of work on a page. Like I said, make sure that your work tells a narrative and that you don't repeat things. Like I happen to repeat this because I just dragged a bunch of files in, but make sure that if there is a repeat, maybe it's explaining a process or a fail or something that you didn't quite accomplish, and make sure your portfolio explains your most current work. That, if you do have a piece from like year before, make sure that it's relevant and it makes sense that you have that. So that's just a quick guide to kind of creating a portfolio inside of InDesign. Well, you can see how quick that was to make a contact sheet. It's so simple. So now that I'm done with that, and let's say I've done all of my pages, I can see my whole layout of my pages. If there's pages I want to get rid of because I didn't end up using them, I can select the little page down here and I can click the little delete bin and that would get rid of it. So maybe I'm only going to have a 5-page portfolio, select all of those pages and delete it. Also too, I can move my pages around, so if I want page 3 to be over there, I can just drag that around and that changes the page layout. Yeah? Simple as that to change your pages around, which is very helpful when you've got a portfolio. Maybe you want to change the order of things. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click File and I'm going to go to Package. This is going to save a version that's an InDesign file. It's going to put all of the files in my portfolio in a nice little folder, and it's also going to save it as a PDF. So I'm going to click Package here. I'm going to click Save. And I'm going to quickly just save it where I'm going to save it to, so I'm just going to call it Portfolio. Click Save. Tell it to save to the desktop, for example, or wherever you want to save it to. Basically, the default setting is going to create a PDF, IDML, which will print on anything and open up on older versions of InDesign, an InDesign file for you. It'll package all of your fonts and it will also create a PDF. And I will do a separate video, you guys, to explain how to optimize the size of your PDF. But just for now, this just makes sure for later you have all of those files. So I've got a folder here on my desktop now called Portfolio folder. Inside of there, you'll see there's my PDF, my final PDF. I'm going to double click on that. There's my portfolio. You can see there's my final image. This is a print portfolio, so this is going to be very big as a file size, so I'm going to want to clean that up, and I'll show you guys how to do that later, but it's always best to save a high quality version of that. And then also too, if I go in here into my folder, you'll see that it's put all of my links, all of my images into this folder, and it's also put all of my fonts. So if later on I open this again and I want to rechange something in it, I've got all of the elements there with my InDesign file, so I can edit it in case I've actually lost or moved a file. I don't have to worry about it. I've got this folder that has everything in it. So that's a very quick tutorial on how to use InDesign to make a quick portfolio. If you've got any questions, send me an email.